Hi, my name is Kayla. I work in Patchogue Medford School District. I work in a general education setting with ELL students on my roster. This is my first year having students on my roster officially. I'd like to start off by telling you all how I got into this field and why I got interested and why I wanted to study English language learners and TESOL in my master's program. So I graduated with my undergrad in January, special education and general ed, birth to 6th grade. So I'm quad certified. I started subbing in South Country School District immediately after I got my degree. So I started subbing in the spring. Per diem subbing, I was approached with the opportunity to take an ENL teacher leave replacement for kindergarten through 3rd grade. It was a very odd situation, a very atypical situation. The principal said that it was an emergency situation where they needed somebody not certified in TESOL to take over this position as it is a mandated service. So I went from a per diem sub to all of a sudden an ENL push in and pull out teacher just 2 months, 3 months after graduating with my undergrad. And again, I had no experience in teaching English language learners at all before. So it was a shock at first to not only be a push-in teacher. I was used to, in my student teaching experiences, being a classroom teacher for general ed or special ed settings. So being a push-in teacher at all was different to me. And also pulling these students out and teaching them in a way that I never had to teach my students for their language, most specifically. So this is how I identify myself as an ENL teacher. This is how it began. This is how I got interested in becoming an ENL teacher. I worked very closely with 2 women who helped me and taught me very similar methods to what we have learned in our course materials. So working really closely with these women, they taught me similar strategies, which includes, a lot of visuals, and mostly just really digging deeper into the foundation or the basics of reading and writing that these students from other countries, I found the students I had in their countries didn't even have the education in their own native language. So to come into our country and be exposed to literature in general was something that I had to last year implement into my daily lessons. My daily pull-out lessons were sometimes just sitting with these students and looking through our classroom library in a small group, myself and sometimes 1 student, sometimes 5 or 6. So even to look at literature at all and learning about a book, how to hold a book, which way you read. These students were very low academically, of course. So that was what was included in some of my first experiences with ENL students. Now coming into my new school year in September, I had gotten a position as a 3rd grade general ed teacher at Patchogue Medford with 7 ENL students on my roster. So I was now the classroom teacher of general ed students along with these ENL English language learners. So I tried to implement a lot of the same strategies that I had before. So a lot of visuals, and I found myself using more with 3rd graders concrete and inquiry-based learning methods. So it actually had changed from my experiences in the past, and it moved more toward hands-on and multisensory. This is how I see myself. This answers the question, how I see myself in relation to my students in the classroom, which has had changed since the spring, where I was a pull-out teacher, just introducing literature and teaching basic sounds with pictures, foundations. That's what more of what I did in the spring, and now coming into a third grade setting where these students had that base of literature. Now I was using more of the curriculum and more content, and used ENL strategies such as visuals, multisensory, inquiry-based learning. My district has put forward a lot of project-based learning methods. I've gotten a lot of training in that, and I actually find that to be huge for my ENL students to have a question. I don't know if I mentioned this in one of the discussion boards, but to even have a simple question like, does an apple sink or float? We did this in the fall with Johnny Appleseed with my ENL students. I said, a very simple question, does an apple sink or float? To provide that question, to give the students a tub of water and an apple, and to make the prediction, to act out and practice, does an apple sink or float? To have their mind question this. Of course, collaboration, I put them in teams, in groups, and as a team, my students worked together, questioned each other, tried out different methods, and of course, this is an extremely simple example, but as a simple example, that is an example of an inquiry-based learning method lesson. So I have done a lot of those for throughout the year for different curriculum units, and I find that to work really well in developing not only the academic CALP language, but BICS as well. Just to have the students say, can you pass me that apple? Or, I don't know what's going to happen. These simple, or what seems to be simple to English language learners as the BICS language, it develops it, and it helps the students to interact with each other, which sometimes I feel is just as, or sometimes even more beneficial to students to have that interaction with each other. So an inquiry-based learning lesson does assist my students in their BICS and CALP, I think in a very balanced way. I also have used games to assist my students in that social language, to even read the directions, which I think I've mentioned in our discussion board. Patchogue Medford School District has been implementing the PEAS method, which is to enhance student physical, emotional, academic, and social skills throughout our school days. So to have the opportunity for structured play, I think we also watched a video on this, the structured play, and to play a game and to be provided pieces and an instruction manual and try to figure these situations out is huge for my students, and I find it to be more beneficial than a lecture. So I will keep giving you different examples of what I do in my classroom. Poems with motion, I use the body a lot. This helps to assist my students in associating movement with the words. Instead of a visual, they're now using their bodies to act out what's happening. So a very simple example, one of my first days as the pull-out teacher in the spring, I found a poem online that said, I go up, I go down. And again, these were kindergartners. They're not my third graders anymore. I don't do this with my third graders. But the kindergartners, to move their bodies up and to understand what up means, instead of describing it with a definition, to move their body up and to learn what this word up means. And then I go down, I turn around. These simple words, I go, they're reading it. I had it displayed on an anchor chart. So to have these experiences together creates an interest, which we talk about a lot in our course, an interest for the students. And then the teacher, myself, I sit back and I become the facilitator. I become the director, the guider in all of the examples that I've given you. A movement poem, these games, inquiry-based learning, project-based learning. If you notice, I am not involving myself so much in the implementation of it. I provide my students with the materials, the tools, the question, and of course an introduction when necessary. And I let my students to explore or learn out of exploration. And I find as the facilitator in the classroom, my classroom becomes more student-centered, which in turn is beneficial to our goal as ENL teachers to enhance the BICS and CALP language. I have more examples of how I have used inquiry-based learning or project-based learning, but I think that I've sort of gotten that point across. But throughout, I want to add, throughout all of these examples that I've given you, I not only provide the introduction and the materials and the tools, but also to have some sort of reference for the students. So not to send them off completely with just their memory of what I said, but to have anchor charts like I mentioned during inquiry-based or project-based, to have the anchor charts with collaboration. They look and have the references there. So that's visual with labels, or depending on the lesson, of course, it's designed differently. So overall, I think that my way of teaching ENL students, although we are not done with our degree yet, I don't know that it'll change too much. I think that the basics of what we learned in the course is what we practice in our classrooms, and that has shown success for me so far, for the teachers that I've learned from, and I think that we as teachers of ENL will just grow over time with these strategies and to refine them to make them more specific and more beneficial to the students and, of course, our teaching methods. So I think that's probably about it. Summary, I include a lot of visuals, collaboration. I am the facilitator. This enhances student BICS and CALP language. And finally, I have to apologize for my voice being so nasally. I was homesick from work actually in the beginning of the week, so I prolonged this video as long as possible until my voice was less nasally, but this is what it is today. So I hope you enjoyed my video, and I can't wait to watch and comment on yours. Thank you.